Hello, I am Joe Hobson with Midwest Trading Horticultural Supplies. We are a company that produces quality products, soil mixes, amendments, and mulches for the professional landscape contractors and growers. Part of our mission here at Midwest Trading is to also find solutions for our customers. Having a background of 25 years experience at two prominent landscape companies in the northern Illinois area allows me to think about our landscape contractors quite a bit and consider what those solutions might be. Today, what we're going to focus on is mulching. We're not going to be focused on the product itself, but instead the timing of when you are mulching. And I'm going to challenge you to reconsider what the commonality is now and explain some of the benefits that you too may value and what I found of value in my time landscaping. There are a lot of points, so I am going to be using some notes today. One of the big things I hear about challenges in landscaping, and that's been true for many years and continues to be true, it's not everyone, but it is many, is that labor is an issue. Hard to find enough. There's more turnover, so experience is becoming more limited, difficult to retain. Even for those of you who don't have that issue, I'm sure you're still concerned about efficiency and customer satisfaction. So you too fall in this same bucket. So my big question is, when do you mulch? Commonly, when I ask that question to my friends in the industry, and as I've experienced over the years and continue, the answer is spring. Technically, in northern Illinois, spring is March 20th through June 20th. So when I think about that, I think most people, what they're thinking whenever they say spring is before things really get rolling. Well, by June, let's face it, perennials are pretty well full grown. Oftentimes when I ask when do you finish, they pause, and many aren't finishing until July or August. So that seems a little bit problematic to me, and I can see a lot of those problems. April through June is the highest peak demand for landscape services. Let's face it, what's going on then? You're trying to get through spring cleanups. You have extras that customers want to have done, drainage work, plantings, whatever those might be. Weeds are already popping. Pruning has started in June. So there's a lot going on. It's usually wetter, more difficult timing, excess overtime. So there's a lot going on there. Yet you're telling me that that's when you believe that you should mulch. That's the best time. I would question that, and I think you should as well. So what are the benefits of mulching at a different time? I call it dormant season mulching. Some refer to it as the fall, but to me it's not the fall. It's the tail end of the fall, and it's really over the winter. Therefore, I call it dormant season. That time frame is basically sometime in November, possibly on some jobs earlier than that, depending on how much leaf there are in the trees and the shrubs and when those might fall. But that's roughly the time frame. Think about it more over the winter. And if you think about it, if you start mulching in November, think of it that way. And if you do that, you do have the opportunity in your fall cleanup to actually have some savings. So if you look at your properties and the leaves are falling, if you time some of those out and capture them into your last cleanup, you don't have to remove the leaves. You can actually simply leave them in the bed, move them off the turf into the beds, mulch right over them. Leaves are organic matter and a great mulch. Rather than gather them all, put them in trucks, go dump them in the yard, pay to have dump fees for many of you, or whatever that might look like. It's a lot more labor, and there's a window of time, 3 to 4 weeks, that during your fall cleanups, you can also mulch and definitely reduce your labor time in the fall cleanup. The other advantage this gives you is some end of the season revenue, assuming it's an extra, or if you're in a contract and you're accruing, it does allow you some extra revenue at that time. I think a big one also, I hear a lot of concerns about not having enough labor for snow plowing. What I did and found very successful was think about these three big buckets. For you snow plowers, snow plowing, mulching, and dormant pruning. Dormant pruning, almost every job requires some, and some of that, which is a conversation in detail for another day, when you think about June, it's a lot of time doing a lot of different work and a lot of pruning. Well, if you can go in the off season and push things off, such as I'm looking behind the camera, our parking lot, it's low growth sumac. We push that back very heavily in the dormant season, and we only have to prune it one time during the season. So you can actually reduce time in June through your dormant pruning in the winter, and that's of good value and good use of your crew's time. And potentially you can have more full-time employees whenever you think of it that way, and you've included your mulch in that area, which is beneficial to your overall operation. Well, some people tell me that they're concerned about mulching in the fall and the winter, that it's going to fade or decompose. On the decomposition, it's microbial activity that actually decomposes these products. It's too cold. It's not happening. I've experienced it on many, many jobs. Not going to happen. It'll be laying there in the spring just as you left it. As far as the fading, it's the UV out of the sunlight that fades mulch. During those months, that's when the sun is at its lowest angle. I've never seen any fading over the winter. So rest assured, decomposition and fading is not a problem. The other thing to consider is crews are more efficient, let's face it, whenever temperatures are cooler. If you're mulching in the spring, okay, April, those are nice, May mostly, but at some point it really starts warming up. And for many of you that are mulching in June, July, August, it's hot. Not the best time to be mulching, or it's hard on people to be working in the heat. They're far more efficient. Certainly when it gets too cold, you lose some efficiency too. That is true. But when you think about that, sometimes you're better off losing some efficiency in order to create greater capacity at a different point in the year, which this also does. It's usually drier and less muddy, and curbs and sidewalks are always an issue, keeping those clean, and if you don't, that just requires more work to clean those up. Let's face it, crews are busy in the spring, very busy with lots of stuff. What can you do in your business to diminish that? So what about customers? That's another pushback I hear from contractors. Do they only care about how their jobs look April through November? I always found it odd that, well, the cleanups are done, we're done. Well, the last time I checked, there's still the rest of November, December, January, February, March. There's still 5 more months out of the year. The properties are there. So whether it's residential and homeowners looking out their windows or taking a walk through their own landscape, or office buildings where employees continue to come in, property managers managing those, do those months just not matter? It seems odd we would put so much energy into 8 months, 7.5 to 8 months, and then just walk away from it. Another point I think I would point out from an efficiency standpoint, I'm standing in a perennial bed now that we went ahead and cut back for the fall, and we've mulched it. It's actually in October. So when you're trying to mulch in April, hostas are already out of the ground, other perennials, and even though they may only be this big, the minute they start coming up, you have to work around them. No longer can you just come in with the wheelbarrow, dump it, and spread it out. That option's gone. Now you have to gently work around them or be damaging the plants. Oftentimes you see people picking up by hand out of the wheelbarrow the material and shaking it around those perennials. Just stop and think about that efficiency difference. A wide open bed versus trying to work around those plants. It's a dramatic difference. Sometimes people will tell me, well, why would I, often, there's snow on the ground. They can't see the beds anyway in the dormant season, so how's that advantageous? So last winter, starting in December 1st of 2019 through April 1st, I tracked every day, including the weekends. And I simply got up and looked around and asked myself this simple question. If I were in landscaping, would I send crews out to mulch today? 39 of those days, not including the weekends, the answer was yes. I first looked at snow cover, ice cover, and secondly, temperature. And if I felt, yes, it's absolutely doable, there were 39 mulch days. Is every winter the same? None are the same. But it points to there are many opportunities to do this. You just have to try it. Most days were in December and March. The fewest days were in January and February. So back to scheduling, snow, we tend to get more snow in the January, February. So maybe you do more snow plowing and dormant pruning then and focus more on your mulch in December and March. But it's always there. And if it's allowable, I prefer to mulch versus dormant pruning. Unless I'm mulching in the same bed, dormant prune it first, then mulch. So another big one that I hear pushback from landscape contractors is what I call the wow factor. So what they're talking about, of course, is in the spring, whenever spring actually occurs and you actually mulch, there's that, wow, the job looks great, it's got fresh mulch. That's what my customers are looking for. I had my own book of customers, primarily mostly high-end residential, and I can tell you almost every one of them I convinced we should do it in this time period I'm referring to, and they were agreeable. And you know what? The wow factor was just as big in November or December or January or February or March as it was in April all the way through August, which is what many are doing now. So you can get the wow factor at any time. The other thing I would share with you is many of those customers later, when I spoke with them, told me, that was pretty cool. I noticed my yard looked better than anybody else on the block because of the mulching that you did in this time frame. So the wow factor can be managed at every time. Plus the wow factor, it only lasts so long anyway, and they move on to other things in life. I don't think customers will do this. Well, let me ask you this. Have you tried? Just think about some of the points I've told you already, and you probably have more for your business to consider. And I think it's one of those things, if you never try it, you will never get there. And maybe rather than trying to conquer the whole thing at one time, try a few jobs. Just try focusing. If you can get 25% of your mulching done, aren't you that much better off when spring truly rolls around? I think if you stop and think about that, you would concur, yeah, that would be great. And furthermore, most customers, if you just talk to them about it and the realities in the business, they often listen. And once they understand some of those realities, they're like, yeah, I can see that. Quite often you'll find flexibility. You just have to ask and have the discussion. It's not that hard. And the last one I would point to is sometimes mulch is in contracts. I don't like it that way. I prefer to have flexibility. But again, that's achievable. Move it from supposedly April or whenever you're trying to do it to the fall, and have a statement in there. If it didn't get done, it rolls in somewhere into January or February. So it is, or just take it out and have it as a work order, a separate item, and just eliminate that altogether. So those are just a few of my thoughts. I can assure you that I found great success in this. It works really well. It's not about perfection. It's really about moving the needle, continuing to work on that labor issue that you have, the busyness of the spring, and this is something you can easily insert into your business, and I would challenge you to think about that a lot. Feel free to call me at any time at the office, and I'd be happy to discuss that further. I'd also be happy to come to your facility and speak with you and or your team about this concept in more detail. Thank you very much for listening today. I hope you have found some value. Take care.